All right.
All right.
What's going
We
on? What's
are
going on?
we are live on Facebook, live on YouTube.
All right, I'm gonna mute you on this end. Yo, yo. What's going on? What's going on?
Oh, snap. I made
Yo,
it to the stoop.
What's going on?
What's up, Gab? I'm over here. First of all, I'm about to choke in this. It's
Good. I'm
mad hot.
chilling. What's going
You
on?
chilling, living the Cali life, not
Where?
missing cold weather in Brooklyn,
Oh
but
man.
but still missing Brooklyn, but not the weather.
Yeah. Nah. Listen, it's gonna be in the 50s this weekend. I need to come out there.
Yeah, nah, we over here 80s, chilling. I'm trying to use that to be like my balance right now in this
Yeah.
crazy ass world that we got going on.
That's what's
But
up.
thankfully we got STOOP55 to bring us some good info, some good knowledge, some good
Yeah.
vibes. So I'm looking
Good
forward to seeing
vibration.
this episode.
As am I. As am I. You're glowing. I see. You're glowing.
That's just a window, you know what I'm saying? You would think I
Okay.
would get tans because of it, but it's like pale on this side. So we're gonna just hold on, let me hit it like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Peace. No problem. Later.
Later. All right, folks. What's going on? I'm seeing people check in. Get going real quick. Good evening. Good evening. All right, let's get started. Good evening, everybody. My name is Gavin Webb. I am the founder, co-founder, and producer here at STOOP55. Welcome to From the Front Lines. Tonight, Dr. Cooper will not be hosting. I'll be stepping in for him. He's currently working in the ER right now in New Orleans. We hope he is safe and healthy as he's helping patients out. We appreciate him, and we'll check in maybe next week with him. In lieu of Teachers Appreciation Week, I am excited to say that we have two educators checking in tonight. We have the candidate for New York State Senate, Jabari Bristol of the 25th District of Brooklyn, New York, as well as Dr. William Hayes, principal of East Camden High School in South New Jersey. I implore you all to join the conversation, ask questions, and get informed. Today's topics will include schooling and education during the pandemic, as well as New York State policy and politics that are going on right now. Before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that we are still raising funds for Brooklyn Hospital. Last week, Dr. Cooper and DJ MOS went live. We decided to add $1,000 to the campaign. So our goal right now is $2,000. We're only $200 away from getting to this goal, but we can use your help. So I implore you to hit the link in our bio and donate today. And while I say that, I'm going to pin something up here just to let you guys know exactly where to navigate. Hold on one second. We would appreciate it. Hopefully this can pin right now. All right. So again, please hit the link in our bio to donate to our campaign. Without further ado, I'm going to see if Dr. Hayes is here so he can check in. Give me 1 sec. Good evening, everybody. What's going on? What's going on? Just waiting a little bit for Dr. Hayes to log in. Again, in lieu of Teacher Appreciation Week, we got 2 educators on the check-in. So it should be definitely an interesting conversation, especially during these times. It's important for us to get the knowledge we need, especially when it comes to the children in schools and what they're going to be doing moving forward. If there's any parents on the check-in, I implore you to ask questions and let Dr. Hayes and Jabari know what's going on in your community. And just waiting for Dr. Hayes to send his request to check in. Dr. Hayes, please send a request and we'll log you in. I agree. Teachers are rock stars. Very important during these times. Very important. I think he might be having a little bit of technical difficulties. We're going to give him a little bit to check in. And if you guys have any questions, especially when it comes to anything concerning education, schooling, your children right now, if they're at home and you need to continue that at-home schooling, please, please ask questions. Ask questions. Little technical difficulties. Just give us a sec. We're waiting on our first guest to check in. And again, as a reminder, we are still raising funds for Brooklyn Hospital. We've decided to add an extra $1,000 for the production and distribution of N95 masks to the frontline workers there. Having a little bit of technical difficulties. Saying that he's unable to join. Having some technical difficulties. You know what? I think I'm going to have to restart this live, possibly. Dr. Hayes, if you can send another request through, we'll try to get you on. What's going on, everybody? For everybody checking in, today's topics for discussion are education during the pandemic and some of the politics and policy in New York State right now that's going on. I'm not seeing. We have a question already directed to me from Sasha while Dr. Hayes is trying to check in. I'll go ahead and answer that. There's a question pertaining to why we started STOOP55. STOOP55 was a platform that we created to lend a hand to our artists and other individuals that were looking for a platform. We use STOOP55 as a medium to showcase marginalized artists and people that are talented and have knowledge to spread to the community through documentaries, through interview series, and through live shows just like this. You know, during the pandemic, it's important for us to spread the knowledge that we're able to obtain from the people that we know, and using this medium is the best way to do it. We are still in need of PPE. Somebody had asked if we need that right now. And yes, we're raising funds for Brooklyn Hospital. New York State medical departments are in dire need right now for that. So please, please hit the link in our bio and donate today. Just waiting on Dr. Hayes. All right. If you can send a request, sir. Again, apologies for the technical difficulties. Instagram needs to get their bandwidth up. There's too many people going live at once, but we're trying to get this knowledge to y'all. Don't worry, don't worry. Here we go, here we go. All right. Took long enough. Yo, what's up, my brother?
What's going on, Chief? My bad.
Apologies for the inconvenience, you know.
You know, educators keep our pages on private. I didn't know I needed to be public for the world to see me.
All good, my brother, all good. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good, man. No major complaints. Just happy to be here.
Happy to have you. So for those who don't know you, could you introduce yourself, explain who you are, what you do, please?
Yep, William Hayes. I am the founding principal of Mastery High School of Camden in Camden, New Jersey.
Great, great, great. So let's get to it, man. I mean, you're a principal of a high school in South New Jersey right now. Obviously, the kids are out of school. How are you guys adjusting to the change?
How are we? Man, it's crazy. Life is crazy. So for those who don't know, this is actually my first graduating class. So I actually started this high school 4 years ago. And so 2020 would be the first class to walk across the stage. And so it's all been a major adjustment since we closed schools on March 13th. Just trying to figure out how to take what was true and great about our school when we were in person and really try to make those things exist now.
For sure, for sure. So how are your students dealing with the change in graduation?
I mean, honestly, they're hurt, right? So this is the thing that we typically tell all of our students, you know, work hard. You're going to walk across the stage. You're going to make your families proud. And that was our message for so long, right? And so they're hurt. They're angry. They're upset. They're trying to figure out how to process all of this, like their own personal loss of this momentous occasion. Their families are trying to figure out what this can look like. So I think it's a range of emotions, and they're really trying to figure out how to make sense of all of this in this moment.
Yeah, I can only imagine, man. I can only imagine being in high school right now, not being able to graduate, and then dealing with this pandemic could be a lot. and you're not with your students. So I ask you, like, what are the drawbacks from having to do, like, these video calls to talk to students and not being in the classroom with them?
Man, it's terrible. It is
Yeah.
honestly the worst kind of torture. Educators get into this profession because we love kids and we love human engagement and interaction. We're not people who like sit behind a cubicle. We don't do, virtual conferences. Everything is in person. And so we've lost that touch, that ability to see a kid at 8 and ask, how are you doing? To be able to check back in at 10. And so to lose that daily contact and to switch to a platform that requires a certain level of intentionality, it requires all systems to be in place at the same time for us to, say hello, just to check in. And so, yeah, that's been challenging.
Yeah. So how are you assuring that, kids are having an equal opportunity to learn? Like in New York State, they had an initiative to have all the students have iPads to learn from home. Some school districts, they already had those things in place for students to go home and learn. And then, other districts, there were kids waiting on lines for iPads for hours. Some got them, some didn't. Is it similar in Camden or?
Absolutely. I think my challenges are pretty similar to many of the colleagues that I talk to on a regular basis. So we actually switched to an online platform about a week after we got out of school, and we did so just to set up the infrastructure, knowing that many of our kids didn't have the technology at that particular point. From there, we then made sure that we gave out laptops. So the first thing we did was clear out the laptops in our school, right? There were things we were using in our classroom, our computer labs. We did some fundraising as a network just to raise money to get students laptops, called families, did some drop-offs just to make sure that every household at least had access to a laptop. We also provided information around Comcast specials, how to hook up and connect to online platforms throughout that process. It's really been an ongoing training and support just around closing the technology gap in general.
Sure. So that's great that you guys are able to provide that. And, as we also know, schools are not only the provider of education in underserved districts like the one that you're working in, but you also provide meals to students. How are you guys dealing with that as far as, providing meals to students that don't have that at home already?
Yeah, man, it's actually a crazy thing that I don't often talk about, but just this idea that when schools closed, the first question that was asked was, how are you going to feed kids, right? And so we all know that, schools provide a safe haven for students. In many cases, those who have food insecurities are ensured meals every day within the school. It is my personal belief that schools probably shouldn't have been the first person to ask that question. It should have been the first person should have been someplace in our legislature, in our city government, in our local state government, supplying for families, right? Even in places where it's a food desert. Fortunately, we're blessed to have a district that is partnered with our food service providers. We're able to give meals out 2 days a week. And so on Monday, students pick up meals that will last on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then they come back and pick up on Thursday for the remainder of the weekend. We also have a food bank that we partner with South Jersey Food Bank, and we give out, groceries and packages to families once a month.
Okay. That's great to hear. And I'll say, my parents are both educators. Growing up, I heard a lot of stories from their end. And, we're talking about education, we're talking about meals, but, having empathy for your students and, being able to be there for them is a big thing. We had a conversation with Officer Jamal Roche last week, and we asked him about, crimes and the uptick on certain things. And we asked about domestic violence, which has been up in Georgia as well as New York. But he said that child abuse has gone down. And we were told that, teachers and administrators in school are the informants of child abuse. Have you seen that at all in your school district? And how are you sort of combating at-risk students at this time?
Yep. So before we even transferred our academic program, the first thing we transferred was our social supports for kids. And so schools were closed on Thursday. We found out we would be closed. We were serving meals on Friday. Our social workers were still calling and contacting their caseloads the following week just to check in with kids that they regularly check in. Our deans had their own caseload of students that they were previously checking in within the school day, and so they were checking in on the phones. And so one of our first methods was to make sure that we had communication with our families and with our students just to see what's going on. But I think overall we underestimate how traumatic this is, right? So schools and education and life as we know it will forever be judged pre-COVID versus post-COVID, right? Who were you as an organization? Who were you as a school pre and post? And we underestimate the compounding of trauma on students based on these events, right? Students didn't get to plan a week ahead of time before they were told that you can't go back to school with the teachers and the community that you've known and seen every day. They didn't get a chance to, you know, say their goodbyes. They didn't get a chance to do the last thing. They were literally ripped out of the village that they've known for so long, and life forever changed. And so we haven't fully processed what that level of loss looks like for students as well as teachers and educators, right? And so you also know that the communities that we serve for so much, schools have been the gap filler. And so now we see not just these new issues, but an exacerbation of issues that always existed and a loss of this kind of village support system. And so while we can communicate and support and, you know, check in, our students are dealing with ongoing trauma even more now than they ever were before. And so it's not necessarily there's a decrease in child abuse. There's a decrease in the services that are available to identify and support and follow up when students are experiencing the challenges and traumatic events of life now.
Okay. Is there anything, because I mean, you know, roles have sort of been switched, you know, since kids are at home, as much as you can have a lesson plan and speak and have some type of conference or class through a phone or through Zoom or something like that, it's really dependent upon the parents to step up. In our communities, you know, our people work. A lot of them, you know, they don't have the privilege of staying at home. Is there anything that you've been communicating or that you can communicate to, you know, the parents that are listening right now, as far as just best practices, as far as, you know, helping their kids, you know, pay attention and learn and sort of use this time as best as possible?
So first and foremost, take care of self and take care of your families, right? I think, you know, even my message to educators before the message to parents, that we need to be human first. We need to be sensitive to, we are all experiencing this pandemic in a variety of ways, and we cannot predict what is happening in the home, right? And so my first message would be to make sure that you and your children are taken care of and you are safe emotionally, physically, all of those things first. The second thing is, yes, the goal is that we grow and students learn, they continue to develop along the way. But my biggest message would be engaged, right? And so one of the challenges I, as a school leader, have and our teachers are having is you want to make sure that kids are progressing through the online, you're reaching out. And you know, probably parents may be annoyed, they're tired, or they're frustrated, unable to help children, particularly as you get to the higher grades. These are subject areas that many parents are not familiar with. Even when you think about the number of students with IEPs that receive specialized services and have entire support teams, and now we need to translate those things and parents need to fill the gap with that. When you think about kindergartners and first graders that are just now learning to read, right? We're losing that much time. And so I would ask that families take care of home and make sure kids are safe, and then make sure that your children are connected and engaged. Now is the time where we need to leverage different resources in a new way. Your email becomes more important, right? To be able to email a teacher, to be able to call and advocate for yourself. I think the challenge right now is our old system of education in which teachers and principals were primarily responsible for making sure that kids like power drive towards the goal is flipped. It is in many cases humanly impossible for a teacher who teaches 100 kids to reach out to every kid each day. It is more plausible that a parent of those 150 kids, we're able to email a teacher and say, I'm struggling, or my kid is struggling with this particular thing. And so we do need that communication gap to remain open around where kids are, what they need, and how we can best support. What is the difference is schools don't necessarily have the capacity to reach out to as many kids to the level that we used to in the state that we're in now.
Okay, very true. I mean, we're talking about the state that we're in now. From your perspective, how do you see educating and schooling of our children changing in a post-pandemic society?
Whoa, it's huge, and I think it's more nuanced than we think, right? I think the common person will say, we are going to leave this crisis and everyone's going to know that we need technology in schools. We've always known that, right? And I think
Yeah,
there's going to be probably more political pressure around technology in schools.
for
I
sure.
think that there will also, what isn't spoken about is we are finding that there were some students who weren't traditionally successful in the previous model of education and are actually being successful now. And so I think we're finding that there may be some new strengths in our children that we didn't know previously existed because we didn't allow them a chance to showcase that. And
Yeah.
so we as educators and parents and students are beginning to reprioritize what we previously thought was important in education. We're beginning to value new skills like the ability of a child to advocate for themselves, the ability of a child to log into the internet and figure out what they need to do for the day. There's more self-directed learning happening now, and it is my hope that we can actually build on that as we move forward. I think we'll also find a new appreciation for schools leaders, and teachers, right? We will see a different value placed on the adults who provide education for children, particularly because we're going to look to those adults to make up the gaps, right? Nobody's asking the question of what it looks like for a kindergartner and first grade to have not gotten the second semester of their essential learning, right? What does it look like for that kid to leave in March and not having finished learn how to read? And so educators will be expected to close that gap. What's challenging is this is all going to be in the context of budget deficits in districts across America, right? And so schools and upper level schools are trying to figure out how to add all of these things that they're saying we need to add in schools while I'm going to have to make up a budget deficit. And we're not talking about a small, we're talking about a huge deficit and loss of income. And so what does that mean for this call for increased technology and a decrease in funding to do so?
For sure, for sure. I know there was, what is it, the New York Post had reported on an interview with Donald Trump like earlier on Tuesday regarding financial aid and the distribution of that to Democratic states. And he basically said that he's not sending anything to New York. And as far as, the trickle down of that, that affects, firefighters, police officers, and obviously teachers and the school districts that are funded by, taxpayer money. I've had conversations with my mom numerous times where she had to come out of her pocket and sort of pay for things as far as things that she needed for her students. Is that something that you sort of predict happening if a state like New Jersey doesn't receive financial aid? Are the teachers and administrators in your school going to be able to step up? Because obviously, we're all going through this together. Were you able to hear that? Hello, hello. Hello? You hear me? Can't hear you. Give us a second, folks. Can't hear you yet. Again, technical difficulties. Instagram is not working with us tonight. They need to get their bandwidth and hear me. Can't hear Hayes, but you can hear me. Let me know. All right. Going to restart live. What's good, y'all? Instagram is not working with us tonight, y'all, but we gonna push through. We gonna push through anyway. I appreciate everybody that was able to log back on and hear us. Special guest Dr. Hayes on the check-in. We're talking about education and schooling in the midst of this pandemic. Gonna get Dr. Hayes back on.
I'm back, Doc.
Yeah, man. Instagram's not working with us tonight.
All good.
All good, all good. But yeah, I was basically saying, you know, as far as New York State, not
Yeah.
necessarily, you know, receiving federal funds from the government, and you know, the trickle down of that and how it affects, you know, teachers and police officers and cops. And you know, like I said, my parents are educators. I've heard numerous stories of them having to go into their pockets to provide, you know, supplies and resources for your students. But you know, at this time, it's not easy for anybody. You know, as a principal and knowing the teachers in your school, will they have the means to help out if you don't receive like the financial aid that you necessarily need?
So to be clear, we're not talking about like helping out with supplies. We're talking loss of jobs, right? We're
Lost
talking
jobs.
about
Okay.
growing classroom size. And so the challenge teachers who have jobs to help out in that capacity. And so that's actually in
Okay.
my head. And the challenge that I'm weighing, you haven't heard anything about bailouts for schools, right? You haven't heard. I think it's actually starting to rumble. In many cases, we're about it publicly. This is huge right now, and a lot of schools are carrying the stress of getting through this year and then dealing with it. But next year is going to hit extremely hard, and so I do fear what it's going to look like to take a group of kids that already had exceptional challenges. The disparity in school funding that already existed pre-COVID, the loss that will have occurred once we finish this pandemic and return to school, and then we're to school in which we're going to increase class sizes, decrease social supports because we simply don't have the funding to provide for that. And we already know which population of students are going to be most negatively impacted by this.
Mm-hmm. All right, fair. It seems like you're dealing with a lot. Do you guys have a sense of when you're going to be able to get back in the classroom and open up school, or is that still?
So New Jersey actually just closed school for the rest of the year, right? And so that message came out on Monday. The hope is that we return to school full. There's already rumblings that in many cases we're able to function the way they used to. And so we'll need to figure out like what a rolling schedule will look like to be able to have small classroom sizes, what a continuation of some hybrid model of distance learning and virtual learning will look like. And so I think schools will fundamentally have to change when we open up, particularly as the CDC and medical professionals start to think about what a resurgence of the coronavirus looks like in the fall. And so schools are already preparing, you know, multiple schedules. What is the most ideal schedule look like for next year? What does it look like if we have to close immediately for 2 weeks? What does it look like to have intermittent school throughout the year?
Okay. I'm going to check and see. A couple of people are asking some questions. And I know you spoke about graduation. So are you guys going to be able to do a virtual graduation this year for the students?
So we're going to try to do a hybrid of a virtual graduation that we will release the kids and go live with. And then we'll try to do something special for their families just so they can at least, even for me, so it's also personal to me, right? I think we underestimate how personal these relationships are to the educators.
Yeah.
This is a class that I've had since 8th grade, right? Much like their parents, I too want to see them cross the stage. I recognize how symbolic it is. I recognize how many Black and brown children don't get to cross a stage and how integral that is to your next step in life. And so I am still invested in to do so one by one, 6 feet apart, for them to walk across the stage.
Yeah, it went in and out. Can you hear me? Hello? Virtual graduation. I can only imagine. It's definitely a new day that requires everybody to adjust, and students and teenagers are no different. I can only imagine. Again, just a reminder to y'all, we're still doing our Brooklyn Hospital PPE fundraiser. We're trying to raise an additional $1,000 for the production and distribution. So I implore you all to hit the link in our bio and donate today. Just giving Dr. Hayes a second. To check in. We're going to have Jabari Briston running for New York State Senate checking in next. He's also an educator. I would love to hear his perspective on all of Give Jabari a second to check in. Thank you all for tuning in this evening. I thank Dr. Hayes. All right, let's get him back on the line real quick.
Yo, this is the worst, man. I'm sorry, dude.
No worries, man. No worries. It happens. You know, I feel like everybody is utilizing this live on Instagram right now. They just don't have the bandwidth. And even dealing with issues like this, you know, I'm concerned, especially with students and their access to internet. I know that that's not, you know, the easiest thing to have access to in some of our communities. So have you seen anything regarding, you know, internet access issues and being able to even log in and, you know, be able to speak to teachers?
So even though we were able to get technology in the hands of families, I think we underestimated, right? So one laptop won't resolve all. Can you hear me?
Yeah. It's going in and out a little bit, but.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Wow.
It's all right. I appreciate everybody.
So we have
having a pay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we have families who were able to get laptops, but they're sharing, right? And so families and parents are of it. And it's been a particular for them in that process.
Okay. Okay. I can imagine. All right, my brother. You have, before we switch over and have, oh, let me see. There's one question. I believe my mother just asked the question. So there's a lot of confusion and uncertainty at this time, obviously, but are there any strategies for summer and fall as far as reopening? I know you might have answered that again, but if you can get into any type of detail regarding that as far as the roll-in. And just to add to that, I'm very curious to know from a principal standpoint, would you think requiring students to get tested before coming back into the classroom could be something feasible or attainable to do? And I know, you know, you're at the whim sort of other institutions and you know, the medical space and vicinity in New Jersey, but would you guys be able to do that at all as far as testing?
So we don't have the capacity to offer testing at our school. We do want to take precautions, and so we are developing budgetary plans to increase our nurses hours. We're trying to figure out how to ensure that everyone's safe and prepared. We're looking into what it looks like for kids to have to come back to school and wear masks. And so we are thinking about taking precautions in advance of that. In terms of summer, we are looking at hybrid plans for how do we, you know, do this distance learning through the summer, thinking about summer school options. extension assignments and supports that we can offer kids who have lost learning.
Okay. All right, man. That all sounds good. My brother, I salute you for what you're doing out there. I have a great respect. And, you know, I implore you and I wish you the best of luck moving forward. Is there any parting words, anything that you can say to the folks out there and speak to them? All right, y'all. It looks like Dr. Hayes just logged off. Let me see if he can have, I would love for him to have some parting words just to let y'all know what you can do as far as, you know, especially the parents out there.
Yo, this is the gift that keeps on giving, man.
Yeah, it's all right. We're going to push forward, man. That's all. That's what we know how to do. So we're going to do that. But like I said, if you got any parting words or anything that you can speak to and tell the folks out there. Having it. All right. You hear me? You guys hear me? It seems, and y'all tuning in. I see that Jabari just checked in. Jabari Briston, he's running for New York State Senate. And he's also an educator. Would love to get him in on the conversation. Jabari, please send a request so we can check you in, all right? Yo, what's up, my brother?
Hey, what's up? Am I sideways or what?
You are. I was just about to say you're sitting sideways
All right,
right now.
about that.
Go ahead and flip that. Appreciate that. How you doing, bro?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, man. I can't complain, man. I can't complain. So for those that don't know, please introduce yourself. Tell the folks who you are, what you're doing out there.
Yeah, so hi, everybody. Gavin, thanks for having me on. Everybody, Jabari Brisport. I see somebody say, wow, he's running for the Senate, state Senate. So I'm working in Albany, not DC.
Okay.
But I'm running for state Senate in central Brooklyn, West Brooklyn. If you live in the neighborhoods of Bed-Stuy, Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, Northern Prospect Heights or Crown Heights above Eastern Parkway, or if you live in like Red Hook, Gowanus, Carroll Gardens, Sunset Park, little bits of Park Slope in downtown Brooklyn, all those neighborhoods are in District 25. And, you know, a little bit about me, I'm a public school teacher. Again, shout out to, thanks Gavin for having me on this educator section. It's like really important to be talking about what's happening to our schools and to our students right now, especially in New York. We got 1 million students in New York City public schools. That is a huge population. We got to make sure we're taking care of them and everything. And, I'm a dedicated progressive fighting for things like healthcare for every single person, housing justice for all, clean, green future, fully funded public school systems, and also just fighting against mass incarceration. So thanks again for having me on.
No problem. And thanks for giving the folks context. And, it's dope that you are an educator. And, I would love to know, how has being an educator sort of influenced your activism and your campaign?
Yeah. My kids, I think about them every day. I still teach. So it influences my politics. I want to make sure that we're making a New York that they can be proud of when they grow up into. And, it pains me when I see them in school suffering from like a lack of access to basic needs. Like housing is a basic human need. I got students that are tired all the time, and every once in a while it's because they're up like watching TikTok videos, they're playing video games and stuff. But sometimes it's like this girl, she's telling me, oh, she was up late because she had to go to sleep at her auntie's house, and the next night she's sleeping at grandma's house, and the next night is cousin's house, and that's upsetting because she doesn't have stable housing.
Yeah.
And like, if you look at the statistics, it's like, 1 in 10 students in New York City public schools is homeless or housing unstable. And, we're not doing right by our kids because, they can't concentrate if they don't know where they're going to sleep that night. It's too stressful, and their minds, their brains are still developing. I'm also concerned about healthcare. Like, some of these kids come from buildings where there might be lead in the paint or asbestos in their buildings, and the landlords are not taking care of it, or it's not being handled correctly, and then they might live in areas that are underserved through the healthcare system. Their hospitals are underserved. As many of Black women face a higher maternal mortality rate than women of other colors because we don't invest enough money in our hospitals, especially in low income areas. So think about being a kid where you might be at risk of like higher risk of diabetes or asthma, like many of our people in our community are, and then we have lack of access to healthcare. And these are kids that are developing, and they don't have access to the right doctors and nurses to make sure that they are developing in a healthy way. And then lastly, just like the climate, like I can't run for office, see kids every day, and not think about whether or not we'll be underwater in 20 years or not. Like, I got to make sure that they have clean air and clean water to drink when they grow up. I want them, when they're my age, to be able to walk freely and not be worried about encroaching superstorms or hurricanes or any of that. So I'm fighting for my kids. Truly, they influence my entire politics.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like, just from what you said, obviously there's a lot of different variables that go into play when it comes to children getting like equal previously, just about New York State's incentive to have iPads for all the children. As far as the students that you have, what has your school been doing, and sort of what do you plan to do as far as your campaign to assure that kids in these underserved communities have an equal opportunity to learn now and post-pandemic, I would say?
Yeah, thank you. So, the iPads, that's not a problem. The city already had on deck 300,000 like devices to get to students, which, who knew that going in? Like, where were they before the pandemic, right? Exactly. Like, where were the iPads before COVID-19 hit? So, scaling it up to the rest of the students is really no problem. But we also need to make sure they have like internet connectivity so that when they actually do, like, they can actually log on and attend their classes. I have kids I have not seen since pre-lockdown. It's really upsetting. I know they just, they're in a situation where they don't have the right technology, or maybe they got it, but they can't log on. They don't have reliable internet, or again, they're homeless or housing unstable, and they don't they're not in a place where they can log on. That's upsetting to me to know that, I can't reach them or reach their families to see what's going on with them. It's very, and I'm sure it's traumatizing for them too, to have such a huge disruption in their lives. So we got to take care of them in that. And then also, like, we need to fully fund our schools. So there's something called the Foundation Aid Formula in New York State, which kind of says like how much we should be allocating, per school district in New York State. And there was a big class action lawsuit back in 2006, like 14 years ago, about New York City not getting enough. They established like about a $3 to $4 billion deficit in money that was owed to New York City public schools. And education activists have been clamoring for that money for over a decade, since 2006, and still not getting it. And that's the kind of thing that you need if you want to be able to hire more teachers so that the schools aren't overcrowded, or if you want to hire more counselors. Like, when I talk about like traumatized kids, like, just think about all the kids they're gonna need somebody to talk to when they come out of this. I have students that have had grandparents or other family members either die from COVID-19 or be affected by it in some way. And like, I'm already worried because I teach in an overcrowded school, 1,400 kids. My classes are oversized, but also, like, the counselor situation, there's 3 counselors for 1,400 kids. Like, I'm a math teacher, but you don't need to be a math teacher to like see that's not going to work. That's a terrible ratio. And like, I've had to talk kids down from suicide or anything because the counselor was not available. They had a line of kids out their door. They had too many people to see. And I can only imagine when we come back and kids are going to want to talk to somebody. They need somebody to cry on their shoulder or whatever. The teachers will be there for them, but we just need to fund more counselors, have money for that. But we got to take care of them, their social, emotional selves. Yeah, the technology is too, but also just making sure the schools are funded so that, they have, enough attention from teachers, administration, and also just enough supplies as well.
Yeah. All right. And you spoke about just having funding for the actual school, and You know, I threw that out to Dr. Hayes earlier just regarding, you know, the federal government.
Because that's just going to reinforce, like, already the discrepancy between wealthy neighborhoods and poor ones. Like, we already leave it to schools when it comes to PTAs. And that's why, you know, a PTA in Crown Heights might raise like $10,000 for the year, and a PTA in like the Upper West Side might raise $1 million from their wealthy parents. And that's going to, and, you know, if we leave it to school districts, it's going to reinforce that discrepancy. What we really need to do is tax the rich, tax the wealthiest people in New York City, New York State, much higher than we already are. Like, everybody is sacrificing now. They need to be sacrificing and then some, because they can afford it. They can afford to take the hit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the governor, I'm sure, you know, maybe some people on the call saw, some didn't. He's like an austerity governor. So like right now he's saying, oh, you know, New York is taking a tax hit, you know, because people aren't working right now. So he's cutting services. His argument is that, you know, we can't afford it. And then progressives like me are saying, well, you know, we actually have the money if we just change tax structure and tax the wealthiest people. The governor's not willing to do that. So instead he's going to say we're taking a hit and start cutting things. Education's on the chopping block. Health. He cut Medicaid during this pandemic. And yeah, that's not okay. We need to be making sure that the wealthiest people pay their fair share.
For sure, for sure. Just to remind everybody, we have Jabari Briston on the check-in. He is running for New York State Senate. He's also an educator in the 25th District of Brooklyn. I implore all of you, if you have any questions, especially the parents out there, if you have any questions, please send them in. Do you have anything to say to the parents at this time? I know the roles have been switched up just as far as responsibility, making sure the children are educated. But, you know, obviously people in our community sometimes don't have that bandwidth to help their kids out when it comes to learning. They have to go to work or they're dealing with other issues. Is there anything that you can, you know, tell the parents out there as far as what to do or just how to work through this pandemic?
Yeah, of course. Like, first of all, like, you know, God bless all the parents that are doing their best. I know how stressful it is. Like, you know, teaching is a full-time job. I can only imagine for parents that are trying to still do their full-time jobs from home and also ensure their kids are getting an education on top of that, especially, you know, those people that have 2 or 3 kids they're trying to deal with now in school at home. If you're a single mother, shout out to you. I don't know how you're doing it, but, you know, we got your back. This is a community effort. You know, we got to make sure that we're all working on it together. You know, those teachers we're doing our best. I know recently, you know, if you have a kid that's in New York City that's upwards, you know, up to 8th grade, you know, the grading standards have been relaxed a bit so that, you know, it's just like more of like a pass-fail situation or meet standards, doesn't meet standards situation. So, you know, don't stress if, you know, your kid is not, you know, if they're normally an A student and you don't, you know, you're worried about, you know, the pressure on them to make sure they get that 100%, you know, you can like relax it a bit because we are relaxing grading standards a bit. All, you know, public tests, you know, state tests have been canceled, regions have been canceled, state tests have been canceled, SAT, ACT. So like you can take that stress away. We really shouldn't be teaching to test in the first place. But, you know, that's no longer, you know, on the table as well. And if you're able to be in contact with your teachers, you know, we're here to, you know, to support you as best we can. But it is definitely a very traumatizing time. A lot of teachers recognize it's a trying time. And I want, you know, parents to know that, you know, if you're making an attempt, you're doing enough. It's really important that like, you know, that students feel like, you know, their parents, you know, also believe their education is important to them right now. That they are putting in some time with, you know, the reading and the math every single day. But it's also like, you know better than us also what their home situation is like. I have had a window into all my students' homes in a way that I have not had before. And I hear some of the screaming and the crying, and they got their little sibling running around and shouting or playing video games and stuff. And I hear how chaotic it is. Yeah. And I truly, and I in some of your homes, I do hear how chaotic it is right now. And so, you know, my heart is with you. We're here for support, and however else we can help, just, you know, stay in contact with the teachers.
Right. All right. Well, we're running out of time. It's almost at that hour limit. But like before we get off, what should people know about the upcoming election? And, you know, what do you want them to know about your campaign? How can they get out there and sort of make a change from a policy standpoint as voters?
Great. Thanks so much. Election is June 23rd. Okay, so it's not the November election, everybody. It's June 23rd. I know you might have heard the presidential primary was canceled. It's back on now, so nothing is canceled. The election is June 23rd. If you don't want to go vote in person because you're worried about risking infection, every single person can get a mail-in ballot now. So the state should be sending out request forms to request a mail-in ballot, request an absentee vote. But if you don't want to wait, you can go to a website to just request your own ballot, your own absentee. The website is nycabsentee.com. Again, say nycabsentee.com. I encourage you to request the mail-in ballot. Don't worry about going to the poll site on June 23rd and risking infection. Just do a mail-in ballot. We should have mail-in voting anyway. I'm hoping that this is a great experiment to show that people actually do participate, and we can do that moving forward, because it's just great. It's better for democracy to have that. I would love your support if you live in the neighborhoods that I mentioned earlier. If you missed at the beginning, it's Central Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, Northern Crown Heights, Prospect Heights, and West Brooklyn, Red Hook, Gowanus, Carroll Gardens, Park Slope, Sunset Park, and little bits of downtown Brooklyn, Borum Hill. Again, my name is Jabari Brisport. You can go to my website. It's jabari4statesenate.com. It's my first time on Instagram Live, so I think you can probably click my little image to the Instagram page.
I appreciate all that information, and I'm realizing from our producers we have a little bit more time, so we're gonna go ahead with some questions if that's all right.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Instagram has been bugging tonight, but we're gonna keep pushing forward.
Okay.
As far as questions from the folks out there, how are the kids responding to graduating this spring?
That's a good question. I mean, I haven't had a chance to talk to too many seniors. I'm a middle school teacher, but like, the kids are adjusting as best as they can. I almost think in some cases they're adjusting even better than the parents or us adults are. I mean, I know they're upset not to be with their friends, and graduating over Zoom is not the same thing as graduating in person. I mean, you want to be there hand in hand, cheering on your friends and everything, and they're not going to get that. So I'm sure that's really upsetting to them, to miss like really a rite of passage to graduate, whether that's middle school or high school or whatever level, alongside their peers. So that's frustrating, and hopefully we'll be able to do something down the line once it's safe to congregate again.
Sure. All right, another question from the folks out there. Why did you decide to run for state senate?
Oh, thank you so much. I ran because I was really frustrated with what I saw going on in my community, the rapid gentrification. I grew up in Prospect Heights, Brooklyn. The neighborhood that it is now is nothing like what it used to be. It's really unfortunate to see so many people get pushed out, people that look like me get pushed out. And it made me think, we need to fight much more for affordable housing for people that actually live here. And it's also upsetting to be in a public school that's underfunded every day and feel like I don't have enough time to, reach every single one of my students in the way they need because the school's overcrowded, or to feel like they don't have enough people to do it. I mean, I have had multiple students with, thoughts of suicide, and like, every single one of them breaks my heart. That means kids are under a lot of stress. They're under pressure cooker all the time. And when we don't fund our schools adequately, or when we put money in for cops and not counselors, then there's not enough people for them to talk to. And like, I feel like I'm putting out fires in the best way I can. But what I really wish we had was billions of extra dollars for our public schools so that we can make sure we're attending to those social emotional needs of our kids. So fighting for bigger education funding, fighting against rapid gentrification, and also just like knowing some of my kids may end up in the school to prison pipeline, fighting against mass incarceration because we lock up too many people, especially people that look like us, and ensuring that, we have like a holistic society.
Sure. Now you just touched on, as far as funding not going to the police and going to schooling. Over the past weekend, it was very warm out, and we saw a lot of videos submerge just as far as what's going on in our communities and how, police are not enforcing, the social distancing equally across. As far as, your campaign is concerned and your plans addressing those issues, what do you see happening moving forward as far as, social distancing and that enforcement by the police in our neighborhoods?
Yeah, so, police shouldn't be enforcing social distancing. I mean, we need people to socially distance, but like it would much be better if it was someone who could share information, not only a mask, but also just letting people know that like, hey, listen, 40, 50, 1,000 people, whatever, in this neighborhood have contracted it, needs to go to the hospital. Like, what are you doing right now? It should not be a person with a gun or, baton or anything that's going to sit on somebody's neck like that officer in the East Village. Yeah. And especially we have precedent for that. You've seen the images when they walk around the West Village or in the wider neighborhoods. It's just a casual like walk by and pass out a mask, right? So definitely need somebody some sort of help with reminding people to be safe with each other, but like not the police. Just like it shouldn't be police that show up when somebody's overdosing or police that are helping out the homeless on the street. Police should not be the people that show up in so many circumstances. And that's been true even before this crisis, but police should not be the ones showing up when people are not socially distancing.
Yeah. I feel like us being inundated with these images over and over again, they're definitely affecting us from like a mental standpoint, I would say. As far as addressing that with your kids, moving forward, is there anything in place that you can think of to help the kids out being at home now and when they come back into school and they're still dealing with, the ramifications of everything concerning the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I try and do check-ins. I mean, a lot of everything was so hectic with the way the school shut down, and there was so much pressure to like just try and get back to business as usual, but virtually. And I spent the first day virtually just like checking in, how they doing. Found out one of my kids, she had, symptoms. She didn't get a chance to get an actual test, but like, she had the fever, she had the cough, and like, she had a grandparent that also like gotten symptoms as well. And, there needs to be some sense of like reckoning with what we all just went through, like living through a once in a century, but like beyond one's lifetime. This is a once in a century event that we're living through, and having a chance to reach out to our kids and talk about that, decompress, let them know that we actually are listening to them, want to hear what they have to say about it. It's funny because, kids, they have a crazy sense of humor, and they can be the most like irreverent sometimes about this. Like, they want to make a joke about it, but also like some of them are seriously in like a lot of pain and trauma right now that is not being addressed. And like, who better than the people that are going to be seeing them 8 hours a day, or the buildings that will be holding them 8 hours a day than to address that. Yeah,
for sure. Very important. Let's see if we have any other questions. I implore you all, ask some questions. We got Jabari Briston, on the check-in, running for New York State Senate. So, moving forward, you talked about mental illness and how you're addressing that with the kids. There's numerous drawbacks of not having them in the classroom and not being able to, speak with them face to face, not just from an educational standpoint, but they're not even seeing their peers right now. Are there any other major drawbacks from not having the kids in the classroom with the teachers that some of us are not even necessarily thinking of?
Yeah, it's not having like in-person feedback, like teaching over Zoom or Google Meet or a video conference is just not the same. I'm not there to tell kids they're writing stuff down wrong or whatever. And I love doing that in class, being like, oh no, you missed this, you missed that, it's going to mess you up later. And not being able to have that consistent feedback. It's just not possible in the same way. And also like a big thing too is like in my class, I miss like the group discussion, letting kids talk to each other. And that's like, it's hard to replicate that over like video conference, giving a chance to like have people turn quickly to their neighbors, share an idea, share an answer, share a thought like this. And like, we want our students to be able to collaborate and learn from each other. And it almost like this new setup that we have, trying to do it electronically is kind of setting us back to like a really old time of just, the teacher talks, a student, a much more less dynamic time.
Sure, for sure. All right. Somebody else just asked a question. I feel like you touched base on this, but if you can elaborate a little bit, are states requiring exams moving forward?
Everything is canceled. Yeah, all the elementary school, middle school canceled, the high school regents canceled, the SAT, ACT. Okay. How are they deciding every child be ready for the next grade? That's gonna be. It's gonna be up to whether the school itself says they are meeting standards.
Yeah. So what does that mean for the kids? I remember being in school, the regents was required to graduate. So for kids,
that's a good question.
What's going to happen with that?
It's going to be a little bit messy because it's going to be school by school. What we were told, like especially like I teach some regent classes, is that if the student passes the class, that counts as passing the regents. It's definitely not the same. You know, it's not going to be a same test that every kid is taking, and we don't know if some schools are doing a hard test or an easy test or what, but it's going to be school by school. If they pass the class, they get the credit.
All right, so it's not going to be upon the exam necessarily, but just individual schools taking, you know, the grades that they already have and seeing if they're able to push towards the next grade. I can't help but feel that, you know, they say no child left behind, you know. Is that going to be something that's going to be detrimental to a student's growth as far as education, just being, you know, pushed forward to the next grade without having those exams?
I mean, there's going to be a lot of students that probably are not getting the material or the prep that they need or the help they need, that won't be ready and will get pushed along. Because that's what our system does. It just pushes you along,
Yeah.
you know, age by age, grade by grade, instead of like, you know, push you along by skill level. It is going to be harmful, especially because, you know, students are not getting the amount of practice and prep they would if we were in person. Like, I know, we know they're not, especially with reading. They're definitely not reading as much, not getting as, in math is something you got to drill a lot. You know, they're not getting as much, and especially students that are struggling, like special education, students with special needs. That's really hard because they're just definitely not getting the supports that they need or the support structures that they need right now. And that's what you can be like really concerned about, because, you know, those are the people that need like one or two people, like making sure that they're getting everything. Yeah. And they don't have those, if they don't have the supports at home, then, I mean, that's it. They've lost out on the, you know, several months of instruction.
Sure, for sure. I mean, getting that support at home. I know we spoke about, I was talking to Dr. Hayes earlier, as far as schools providing meals for children. Are you guys able to do that in a sufficient capacity? Are the kids that, you know, don't have the funds to actually have meals at home getting what they need?
Yeah, no, we opened up several like hubs around the city that are still doing the free breakfast, free lunch. So that was taken care of pretty early. Thankfully, so yeah, the food, yeah, handling the food was good. It's the childcare was a little trickier, especially for the kids of essential workers that needed to still go to work. That's also at the hubs as well. But yeah, really, the main thing is, like, you know, these kids are not getting the same level of education as over Zoom or Google Meet as they would have been in the classroom. Especially young kids. Young kids learn by like playing, like especially like, you know, kindergarten, elementary schools, they learn by, you know, playing and interacting with their peers and everything, and they have to be really physical, and there's gonna be serious, like, you know, stunting in their growth.
Yeah. Extremely unfortunate, extremely unfortunate. All right, my brother, I thank you for checking in. I'm not going to hold you. Again, just to let the folks know more about your campaign, where can we hear more about it, get some information? And again, if you can just let the folks know when the vote is going on and they can go out there and make a difference.
Yeah. I'll be quick, because I know I don't want you to get caught up on Instagram. But everybody, again, my name is Jabari Brisport, and the website, well, you can check out my Instagram page, and the website for more information on the platform and everything is linked there, but it's also jabariforstatesenate.com. I'm running in Central Brooklyn for the State Senate, Bed-Stuy, Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, some adjacent neighborhoods on the west side of Brooklyn, Red Hook, Gowanus, and some adjacent neighborhoods. And the election is not November. It is the Democratic primary on June 23rd. And if you want to vote before, you don't want to go to the polls because you don't want to risk infection, you can request an absentee ballot at nycabsentee.com. And anybody can request an absentee ballot in New York.
Great, great. Thank you, my brother. You're doing great work out there. Again, thank you for coming on and spreading that knowledge with the folks. I hope you stay safe, stay healthy out there.
All right. Thanks so much, Gavin. Have a good night. And thanks, everybody.
All right. All right, everybody. I'd like to thank everybody for checking in. Just to let you know, next week we're having another episode of From the Front Lines. We're going to be talking about mental health awareness and what people can do to practice that in the best capacity. It's a crazy time right now. We need to do that self-care and take care of each other. I wish you all positive vibrations, and I implore you to hit the link in our bio and help donate and produce and distribute N95 masks to Brooklyn Hospital. If you have it, you can send. Please stay safe, stay healthy, stay strong out there, y'all. Peace.